The body always sends signals before you can understand what is happening in your awareness. Breakdown never begins with a dramatic event, but with very small signs you think you can ignore. One morning you wake up with a heaviness in your chest for no reason. One day you sit among familiar people but feel detached from everything, as if you are only observing life rather than living in it. In a brief moment you look in the mirror and your eyes feel like someone else's. It is not because you are changing too fast. It is because your entire inner system is reaching a limit where it can no longer operate in the old way. The silent breakdown is not loud. It arrives through a weighted quietness. Your body does not scream. It simply starts pulling energy away from the places it no longer wants to maintain. Thoughts slow down. Emotions become heavy. Small daily movements suddenly feel like a burden. But what scares you is not the exhaustion. What scares you is the feeling of no longer controlling your own direction. This is the point where most people misunderstand. They think they are becoming weaker, losing motivation, becoming worse. But the truth is the opposite. When an energetic system collapses, it is not broken. It simply can no longer withstand the old frequency. You are not getting worse. You are no longer compatible with the structure you have lived in for too long. When the field begins to restructure, you feel as if you are being stretched between two forces. One force wants you to continue as before because that is the familiar safety zone. And another force rises from within, silent but strong enough to make you stop in the middle of the day, as if something is pulling you out of your own rhythm. People often fail to realize this is the stage where awareness reaches its absorption limit. It is not that you lack energy. You are being pushed to the boundary to step into a new layer of perception. Every major transformation begins with a silent breakdown. When the old mind can no longer function, when emotional patterns can no longer run in familiar loops, the body is the first place that trembles. You find it hard to focus, hard to sustain positive emotions, hard to interact with what used to feel familiar. But this is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of overload. As you prepare to exit the lower frequency layer, your nervous system is refusing to carry the weight of the old version. The heaviness, fatigue, emptiness, and disorientation are not negative emotions. They are the natural responses of a body protecting you from a story you no longer belong to. You may think life is making things difficult, but in reality, every fracture you feel is the field's natural mechanism as it breaks apart layers that have become too tight. The body does not speak human language. It speaks through rhythm changes. It makes you slow down a little. It makes you withdraw from crowds. It makes you look at everything and no longer see it the same way. And when these changes appear together, it is not a coincidence. It is the signal that you have reached the limit of your old version and your inner structure needs to be rebuilt. This stage always makes you feel powerless because every attempt to return to your familiar state fails. You try to focus, but the mind does not cooperate. You try to feel good, but your emotions no longer respond. You try to do things the old way, but your body reacts as if being forced. You think you lost motivation, but motivation has not disappeared. It simply refuses to serve a direction that is no longer correct. This is what most people are never taught. When the body reaches its limit, it does not ask you to be stronger. It asks you to be more honest. Honest about the exhaustion you have ignored. Honest about the things you continue out of habit. Honest about the stories you know have expired but still cling to. The silent breakdown is the stage where you have no choice but to see the truth. Not the truth about life, but the truth about you. About the patterns you hold to feel safe. About the roles you play to be accepted. About the limits you think you cannot surpass. When a system reaches its limit, it has only two choices: sustain itself by harming itself, or break apart to reset. And your body always chooses reset, even when you fear it the most. You feel as if you are losing your old version, but in reality you are being prepared for a new structure capable of holding a higher frequency. The silence you feel is the space the field creates, so you have enough room to enter the next stage of transformation. Without the silent breakdown, there is no quantum healing. Without the limit, there is no reset. When the body and awareness reach the threshold, it is not the end. It is the doorway that opens when you least expect it. And if you are brave enough not to run away, you will see that everything is pulling you back to the place you were meant to stand all along. The quantum crack in awareness always appears before you can name it. None of us see it with our eyes. It does not arrive as a special event or a dramatic awakening moment. It arrives as a slight and delicate deviation that if you are not sensitive enough, you will assume you are simply tired. But that crack is the opening point of the entire restructuring process. The field is preparing to activate for you. You are standing in a familiar room, but the light seems different even though the colors remain the same. You speak to someone you know well, but the feeling of connection seems reduced by half. You look at your life and sense something no longer fits, even though you cannot identify what it is. That is the moment your awareness begins to separate from the old version. The quantum crack never comes from the external world. It comes from the inner moment, when the structure of consciousness can no longer withstand the pressure of the old story you have forced yourself to live. When a new layer of awareness is about to open, the first truth appears as a very small tear. You feel you no longer resonate with the habits that used to make you feel safe. You struggle to maintain relationships you could once tolerate. You no longer feel drawn to the familiar patterns of thinking. When the frequency inside begins to change, everything that used to feel stable becomes loose, as if you are standing on ground splitting into two layers. One layer is the part you are familiar with. One layer is the part you are stepping into. The crack lies between those two layers, and your task is not to seal it, but to step across it. What frightens many people is the uncertainty. Humans like what is stable, but stability is sometimes a trap. When awareness grows, the false stability is the first thing to fracture, and you feel that fracture as uneasiness, but there is no real threat. There is only the movement of the field. The quantum crack does one thing. It breaks the glass through which you used to see the world. When that glass shatters, what you see is not the world changing, but the way you see it changing. Sometimes you find yourself unable to continue meaningless conversations. You find places that once made you comfortable now feel suffocating. You find roles you used to perform well now feel heavy. This is not a sign that you are losing connection. It is a sign that you are exiting the old layer of awareness. One of the clearest signals of the quantum crack is the unusual silence in the mind. You may still be busy, still working, still living your daily life, but deep inside there is a layer of stillness you have never felt before. A silence not because of emptiness, but because something is preparing to be born. When awareness begins to split its layers, nothing holds together the way it used to. You look at your life and see the pieces no longer matching. This is the moment many Americans call the awakening shift, but you understand it more deeply. This is the fracture of the old version before you step into another timeline. The quantum crack does not destroy you, it frees you. It separates you from outdated emotional structures, from memories that are still dominating you, from loops you keep repeating just because you did not know you had another choice. When the crack appears, you can no longer pretend as before. Every forced action becomes obvious. Everything that is not true becomes heavy. Every conversation that is not rooted, in essence, becomes difficult to continue. You are not becoming more difficult, you are becoming more real. When you stand at the edge of the quantum fracture, what you feel most strongly is the shift in how you see yourself. Suddenly the habits that once defined you feel unfamiliar. You see the limits you once believed were real becoming unreasonable. You feel your old version losing its power. This is the clearest sign that you are being called into a new layer of awareness. The energy of the universe never forces you. It only nudges you to the point where you cannot continue holding on to the old. And at that exact moment, the crack appears. It creates the opening for new light to enter. It makes you look at your life with a depth you once avoided. It makes you question what you once believed was certain. Not to confuse you, but to help you see the truth. Through this crack, you begin to realize you are not stuck because life is unfair, but because your awareness is not fully open to the possibilities the field is trying to bring in. When consciousness separates from the old frequency foundation, you begin to hear what you could not hear before. A subtler form of intuition, a deeper sensitivity, an inner calling that, is not the echo of fear. If you are feeling these slight deviations in your life, if you feel you no longer belong to what once felt familiar, if you sense a layer of reality peeling away, know that you are not mistaken. You are in the exact stage that everyone who awakens must pass through. And if you are experiencing that crack, tell me whether you feel those subtle deviations. Comment with one word that describes your feeling the most clearly. You are not only sharing, you are confirming to the field that you are ready to step into the next layer of awareness. The return of the observer always happens in the moment you feel you are losing control. It is precisely when you think you are being pulled into chaos that true awareness begins to rise and take its place at the center again. There is no warning, there is no clear sign, there is only a small shift in the way you see everything. Before you reacted the moment emotion surged, now you pause for one beat before reacting. Before, you were dragged by repeating thoughts. Now you hear them from a distance, as if they no longer live in your mind. Before, you believed emotions were you. Now you realize emotions are only a layer of movement passing through awareness. This return is not a grand action. It is a shift in position. You no longer stand inside the flow, you stand outside watching the flow move. You do not try to fix reality. You observe the mechanism behind it. And it is that observation that becomes the true power. When the observer returns, something strange happens. The chaos does not disappear instantly, but it loses its control over you. You feel you are still facing the same problems, but you are no longer swallowed by them. It is as if you are watching your own life from a higher altitude. The same story, but no longer the same viewpoint. And from this level of awareness, you see what you previously overlooked. The external world is not the source of pain. It only amplifies what you have not yet seen inside. Every time you react strongly, it is not because the event is too big, but because something within you has not yet been seen clearly. When the observer returns, you begin to see that mechanism without being pulled into its narrative. You hear the voice in your head, but no longer believe it is the truth. You see emotions rising, but no longer think they are defining you. You watch situations come and go without identifying yourself with them. This return is like stepping out of a fog. The world remains the same, but you are no longer blind. A wider awareness opens, and in that wideness you find the power you once lost. Not the power to control others or circumstances, it is the power to control the point of view. When the point of view changes, everything changes with it. Many people think control means trying to hold everything in their hands, but that is only the survival instinct of the old version. True control is something entirely different. Control is the ability not to be pulled by old reactions. Control is the ability to pause and see through the story the mind is constructing. Control is the ability to choose the frequency you want to maintain, even in difficult contexts. The observer does not fight to regain power. The observer simply stands up and power returns to its rightful place. When you stand in the position of of the observer, you realize there are two layers of reality happening at the same time. One layer is what the world shows you. The other layer is the way you see that world. The first layer is always changing. The second layer is what determines your experience. When you operate from the second layer, you are no longer attacked by life. You begin to read its movements. You understand when you are being triggered and when you are being guided by old memories. You know, when emotions are acting from reflex and when they are giving you a true signal. That is the difference between living by instinct and living by awareness. The observer is not pulled by the past. The observer is not pushed by the future. The observer stands at the point of contact with time, where experience happens but does not distort you. This is the state spiritual traditions and consciousness sciences describe in different ways, but its essence is one. When awareness returns to its right place, reality cannot manipulate you the way it used to. When you stand in the role of the reactor, reality leads you. When you stand in the role of the observer, you lead reality. This shift is gentle but deep. It does not make you cold. It brings a clarity you have never had. You begin to see the motivations behind your behavior. You see the patterns you once repeated unconsciously. You understand that old wounds are not burdens, they are maps. When the observer returns, you no longer live by unconsciousness, you live by agency. And from that agency, a new capability opens. You begin to direct your frequency. You do not wait for a good mood to act. You choose the frequency that generates the mood. You do not wait for circumstances to stabilize before grounding yourself. You stabilize yourself, so circumstances begin to shift. This is the true mechanism of reclaiming control, not fighting, not trying, not proving, but returning to where you have always belonged, the position of pure awareness, unwarped by the old narrative. When you stand in this position, you do not just observe the flow of life. You adjust how it touches you, and the moment that adjustment happens, your entire journey begins to realign with the direction the field has been preparing for a long time. The observer does not come to rescue you. The observer is you when you are no longer lost in the noise of life. And that is the moment true power returns in silence, yet unmistakably. The field always mirrors your inner state before you even realize what you are emitting. The world is not against you. Life is not testing you. The field is simply responding to the exact frequency you keep broadcasting. When you are tense, the world around you becomes heavy. When you are stable, everything flows more easily. When you are afraid, situations that trigger your insecurity appear more often. And when you step into clarity, life begins to open doors you could never find before. The field never speaks incorrectly. It only speaks in a language you usually do not hear, the language of reflection. Humans are used to believing that experience comes from external circumstances. But the truth is that circumstances are only a mirror. The mirror has no intention to shape you. It only shows you what you do not want to look at. When you stand in the ruins of your life and think it is evidence of your helplessness, the field is showing you a different truth. It is mirroring that the part within you is collapsing because it no longer matches the new frequency. When you feel you meet people who do not respect you, the field is reflecting the frequency of self-doubt you have not resolved. When you feel you are being slowed down, the field is reflecting the disturbance in the deep layer of awareness you have been ignoring. When you feel everything is opposing you, it is not a sign that you are going the wrong way. It is a sign that something in you is not aligned with the direction you are choosing. The field never harms you. It only keeps you honest. What most people do not realize is that the field does not react to your words. It does not react to what you think you want. It only reacts to your baseline frequency. Not what you show on the surface, but what you feel most deeply inside. Positive affirmations cannot change the field if your inner layer is still tense. Beautiful goals cannot create results if you live in fear of failure. The field does not hear sentences. The field hears the mechanism of the inner world. When you say you want peace but live in constant tension, the field will mirror the frequency of tension, not the desire for peace. When you say you want love but inside you still fear being hurt, the field will bring experiences that make you face that fear before you can receive what you want. When you say you want a new reality but you refuse to release the old story, the field cannot rearrange. It will mirror your inner division through half-formed situations that make you wonder why everything feels chaotic. Nothing is chaotic. There is only a conflict between the frequency you emit and the frequency you want to receive. When the observer returns, as in the previous part, you begin to see this mechanism more clearly. You no longer think things happen randomly. No experience is meaningless. No event enters your life to make you suffer. Everything arrives with the level of clarity or distortion you are maintaining inside. When you are exhausted, the field mirrors with situations that demand you stop. When you are stuck in doubt, the field mirrors with experiences that force you to face that belief, not to hurt you more, but to show you its origin. The field is always more honest than you. It sees the frequency before you admit it. And that is exactly why you cannot fool the field by pretending. You can smile outwardly, but if you are falling inside, the field will mirror the fall. You can say you are fine, but if your energy is strained, the field will mirror the strain. You can try to appear strong, but if you are afraid, the field will bring situations that make you face the fear directly. The field does not care about the surface. The field only cares about the truth. When you understand this, you begin to change the way you operate. You no longer try to manipulate circumstances because you know circumstances are the result, not the cause. You no longer worry about what is happening to you because you know everything comes from the state you are radiating. You no longer feel powerless in life because you see clearly that when you change your inner state, the field automatically restructures the external. This is when you step into the real power of quantum healing. You do not need to force yourself to think positively. You do not need to try to hold a high vibration. You only need to become transparent with your true inner state and adjust it at the source. When you change the inner feeling, the field changes the outer form. When you change the baseline frequency, reality changes its structure. When you stabilize within, life cannot stay the same. The field has no choice but to mirror your state with perfect accuracy. And in that accuracy, you rediscover what humans always believe they have lost: the ability to create an experience that matches their true nature. The field always stands there as a mirror that never distorts. And each time you look into it with clarity, you are looking at the version of yourself you are ready to step into next. The old identity never collapses in a loud moment. It collapses from within, through very small movements you at first mistake for exhaustion. But in truth, it is the moment the structures that once protected you begin to lose their function, not because they are wrong, but because they no longer match the frequency you are moving toward. When the old identity reaches its endpoint, you experience a very particular kind of tension. You want to change, but you also want to hold on to what makes you feel safe. You cannot continue living the old way, yet you fear that what is opening might be beyond your control. This inner pull is the clearest sign that the old identity is dissolving. It does not need you to destroy it. It dissolves on its own when you no longer live by its frequency. Collapse is not failure. It is the natural process of an energetic system exceeding its old threshold. When your old version no longer has enough space to hold the expansion rising inside, it begins to crack, and those cracks appear through states that seem ordinary. One day, you can no longer tolerate doing things that used to make you feel valuable. In a brief moment, you see that the things you were once proud of now feel meaningless. One evening you sit in your familiar room and feel as if you are living someone else's life. That is the moment the old identity loses its power. No one teaches you that this is a sign of transformation. You are taught to be strong, to be persistent, to stay loyal to what you once chose. But no one tells you that some choices only fit you when you are at a certain layer of awareness. When you outgrow that frequency, everything attached to it will fall away naturally. The old identity is built from memory, from environment, from the moments you were hurt and had to protect yourself, from the stories you told yourself to make sense of life. It once had a reason to exist. It once kept you alive, but it cannot take you to the next stage. When the inner expansion increases, the old identity becomes tight. You feel you no longer fit the role you have been playing. You no longer resonate with the conversations you used to join. You no longer align with the people you were once close to. This scares many people because they mistake this shedding for loss. They think they are losing their life. But life is only rearranging to match the new frequency. The old identity does not fall with a loud noise. It melts through silence. You feel you no longer have the energy to push yourself as before. You no longer feel excited about the things that once inspired you. You no longer find yourself in your old goals. This is not deterioration. This is shedding. When an energetic system prepares to shift layers, it retrieves energy from the parts that are no longer aligned. Everything that makes you lose interest, lose connection, or lose motivation is a sign of that retrieval. It is like pulling electricity from one room to illuminate another. You are not losing energy. You are transferring it to the version that fits you more. When the old identity collapses, you enter a stage of ambiguity. You no longer belong to the old place, but you have not stabilized in the new one. This is the transitional zone many people confuse with depression or being lost, but its nature is completely different. Depression pulls you downward. The transitional zone keeps you in between. It does not paralyze you. It only removes what is no longer aligned, so you do not cling to it. If you pay attention, you will see that not everything in your life collapses at once. Only what does not match your new frequency falls first. What can continue with you will remain still. You do not need to force anything. The field sorts it for you. Your old identity is built from layers of protection. When you grow in awareness, those layers become too heavy to carry. Collapse happens so you can move lighter. You feel yourself changing not because you try. You change because the old version can no longer operate at the frequency layer you are stepping into. The truth is, none of your identities are permanent. Each version is only suitable for one phase of the journey, and this phase requires you to become something you could not be before. When the old identity falls away, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is the core, the part of you that has never been distorted by expectations, environment, fear, or the patterns you learned from others. That part does not collapse. That part is the foundation. And when the foundation becomes visible, you begin to feel yourself with a clarity you have never had. You no longer live from memory. You live from possibility. You no longer repeat reflexes. You operate from awareness. You no longer try to be someone. You return to the part of you that has always existed in silence. The collapse of the old identity is not here to make you lose your path. It collapses so you can see the path you could never see before. And when you enter this phase of the journey, you understand that every shedding is not an ending. It is the confirmation that you have become larger than the version you once thought was final. The moment the frequency structure resets, always arrives in a silence the old mind cannot understand. It is not a ceremonial ritual, not an emotional breakthrough, and not a clear sign that your life has just changed. Frequency does not reset through noise. It resets through an internal separation you can only feel when you are still enough to sense what is happening inside you. This moment often occurs when you no longer have the strength to push anything further. When you let go, not because you want to let go, but because every effort based on the old ego suddenly becomes meaningless. You no longer want to chase the things that once occupied your mind. You no longer want to argue with the voices in your head. You no longer want to force yourself back into an old shape just to feel safe. It is a form of exhaustion, not of the body, but of a system that has been running too long on a distorted frequency. When you reach that point, the frequency structure begins to self-adjust. You do not and cannot consciously control this process. It happens when the old energy within you no longer has the capacity to maintain the old form. You feel as if your inner awareness is splitting into two parts. One part is the old you, familiar, noisy, trying to hold everything. The other part is a strange silence, a transparent stillness without emotion but filled with a strength you have never known. The moment you stand between these two parts is the reset point. Reset is not starting over. Reset is clearing the noise. It is removing the lower vibrations that blurred your ability to see. It is returning the body, the mind, and the energetic field to their natural alignment. When reset happens, you notice the old reflexes lose their pull. Thoughts that used to repeat endlessly suddenly feel distant, no longer pressing against your nerves. Fears that once controlled you fade like a dream whose image you remember but whose emotion you no longer feel. And the things that once hurt you no longer make you shrink. Nothing disappears. They simply no longer exist at your frequency. This shift is so subtle that if you do not pay attention, you will think you are merely calmer than usual, but you are not calmer. You are at a different frequency, a layer where the mind no longer runs ahead of experience, a layer where the nervous system no longer reacts too quickly, a layer where you are no longer pulled by worry or memory, a layer where you can see everything simply as it is, without the old interpretations slipping in. This is what philosophical traditions call the undispersed state, and what neuroscience calls the synchronization of the nervous system. But in the quantum journey, this is the most important moment, because when the frequency structure resets, you become untouched by the distortions that once pulled you off track. You begin to hear the true signal underneath every movement. You begin to sense direction without needing a reason. You begin to see possibilities you could not perceive before because the old mind had covered them with fear. Reset does not change your life immediately. Reset changes your position within yourself. And from that position, you look at life from a new altitude. The things that once made you panic no longer destabilize you. The people who once had a strong impact on your emotional state suddenly feel distant, as if they no longer have the power to touch your nervous system. The situations that once felt threatening now feel normal, not because they changed, but because you shifted your frequency enough to stop reacting from the lower layer. When the frequency structure resets, you feel a very particular state, a lightness that is not lightness from comfort, a clarity that is not clarity from strong logic, an emptiness that is not emptiness, a flexible void like the spaciousness needed for you to see your next direction. This is the zone where the field begins to rearrange your entire reality, not through miracles, but by aligning everything to your new frequency. Unnecessary interactions fade gradually. Relationships that no longer share your frequency begin to thin out. Work that no longer matches your new version becomes harder to maintain. Opportunities that belong to your new level of awareness appear gently, as if they were always waiting for you to shift frequencies so you could receive them. Reset is not the result of effort. Reset is the result of letting go in the right place. When you no longer cling to the old version, the new frequency opens and does the rest. And because of this, the reset moment is one of the most beautiful moments in the awakening journey. not loud, not dramatic, not intense, only a silence you can feel with your whole body. If you are feeling lighter, clearer, less reactive to old patterns, or simply noticing that life no longer hits you the way it did before, these are very clear signs that your frequency is resetting. And if you are in that moment right now, a single like from you will help the algorithm send this message to those who are also standing at the threshold of their transformation. You are not just supporting, you are signaling that your new frequency has begun to operate. The automatic healing mechanism always begins at the point where you believe you have run out of strength. When the frequency is reset, the deepest part of your energetic system immediately enters a recovery mode you cannot create through effort. It does not need you to think positively. It does not need you to do anything special. It only needs you to stop resisting the process occurring within. Quantum healing is not the removal of wounds. It is the dismantling of the structures that kept you trapped in those wounds. When the old structure falls away, your body and your energetic field are no longer forced to repeat the old reactions. And this is when the healing mechanism begins to operate on its own. The first thing you will feel is the shift in how your body responds to familiar triggers. Things that once made you angry no longer cut as deeply as before. Memories that once caused pain now appear lightly as if you are observing them from afar. Situations that once made you collapse now only move you slightly before you return to your center. This is not because you have become stronger. This is because your nervous system is being rewired according to the new frequency. In conventional healing, people try to control their emotions to become better. But in quantum healing, emotions self-regulate because your energy system no longer emits distorted signals. Old emotional layers can only exist when the old frequency is sustained. When the frequency changes, emotions have no place to anchor, and they fall away naturally, like dried leaves. The next thing that happens is that you begin to feel your body differently. Your breathing settles without being forced. Your muscles loosen even when you are not trying to relax. Your heartbeat becomes more stable when you face the things that once made you anxious. This is the recovery mechanism of the nervous system when it is no longer pulled by the old survival reflexes. When the old reflexes lose their intensity, the energy trapped in the body is released. You begin to sleep more deeply. You begin to eat less but feel more nourished. You begin to feel your body reorganizing itself into a more stable form. Quantum healing is not the removal of darkness. It is the removal of the stories that made the darkness heavy. When the story is dismantled, the darkness returns to a neutral experience, no longer magnified by fear, no longer shaped by memory, no longer glued to what has passed. And when darkness returns to neutrality, the inner light begins to operate without obstruction. One of the clearest signs of quantum healing activation is that you begin to hear the voice of the old ego differently. Instead of being dragged into the dialogues in your mind, you simply observe them as background noise. The mind still speaks, but you no longer respond. It gives warnings, but you no longer react. It brings up memories, but you are no longer pulled into them. This is the moment awareness fully separates from the old unconscious layer. And this separation frees a significant amount of energy that was once trapped in looping patterns. When that energy is released, you begin to feel light, even when your external life has not changed. You begin to feel brighter, even when circumstances are not favorable. You begin to feel calm in places that once felt suffocating. This is not positive illusion. This is a sign that the field is aligning with your new frequency. A synchronized system feels bright even when the environment has not yet caught up. Quantum healing also changes the way you view old wounds. You no longer try to erase them. You simply see them as data that no longer matches the version you are becoming. And when data is no longer used, it loses influence. You do not need to defeat the past. You only need to step out of the frequency that allows the past to continue having power. When you stand in the new frequency, the old things cannot follow. There is no confrontation, there is no force. There is only vibrational incompatibility. The moment the automatic healing mechanism activates is also the moment your intuition becomes stronger. Not in the mystical sense, but in the sense that your sensitivity to the correct direction increases. You look at a choice and your body instantly knows what aligns and what does not. You speak to someone and immediately sense their energetic layer without analysis. You stand before a situation and know whether to step in or step out through a subtle feeling in your chest. This is the signal of a system that has been put back into order. When automatic healing occurs, you also begin to reinterpret reality differently. You no longer believe that life is making things difficult for you. You see clearly that everything happening has a purpose of adjusting your frequency. You realize that the events that once hurt you were actually clearing the path for you to leave behind what no longer fits. You see that each moment of chaos is the field pushing you out of places that are not yours. What once caused pain now becomes clear, like lessons from a lower awareness layer that you have already transcended. The most beautiful part of quantum healing activation is that you begin to live without needing to protect yourself, not because you have become invincible, but because your system no longer emits the frequency that attracts pain. When you no longer hold distortion, the field no longer brings experiences meant to fix the distortion. When you no longer emit fear, the field no longer brings situations that force you to confront fear just to break free from it. When you no longer carry artificial layers, the field no longer brings lessons meant to break those layers. Healing is no longer a goal. Healing becomes a state in which you are no longer pulled by old reactions, no longer guided by fear, no longer distorted by memory. A state in which you stand firmly in the new frequency without effort. When you enter this stage, you realize that healing has never come from effort. It comes from the fullness you step into when you are no longer limited by the smaller version of yourself. And in that very moment, the field begins to rearrange everything according to your new frequency without requiring anything more from you. The body is always the first place to react when awareness changes, even when the mind has not yet understood what is happening. Every quantum movement within you is never just mental. It spreads into the nerves, the breath, the hormones, the heartbeat, the muscles, and even the way the body processes energy. Humans often think they change from thought, but the truth is that the body always changes first and the mind catches up later. When a new layer of awareness opens, the body is where it becomes most visible. You begin to feel subtle shifts in the rhythm of your breath. No more rushing from the old survival layer. No more chaotic rhythm you were once used to. There are moments when you breathe deeply without trying, as if the body is remembering how it operates when it is no longer distorted by tension. This is a sign of synchronization between the nervous system and the new frequency you are entering. You are not practicing calmness. The body is returning to its natural state when awareness is no longer distorted. One of the clearest changes is the gradual reduction of overreaction. Before, even a small trigger made your body tense, your heart race, your breath shorten, your muscles contract. This was the sign of a nervous system stretched in a long-term alert mode. But when awareness shifts layers, the body no longer activates the survival mode as easily. You still feel pressure, but the body does not jump into fight or flight as quickly as before. This is not numbness. This is the elevation of the nervous system. A stable nervous system no longer reacts to the triggers that once made you lose control. The body also begins to release trapped energy. Areas that once felt heavy, sore, or tight suddenly feel more open for no specific reason. Mild pains appear and fade. Small vibrations in the chest or abdomen come and go, All of these are signs that the body is dissolving energetic knots accumulated from old reactions you repeated for many years. You are not having a problem, you are being released. When awareness expands, the body does more than release old energy. It begins to receive new information in a more refined way. You become more sensitive to the environment, but not in a fragile sense. Sensitivity here means the ability to read the energy of people, spaces, and situations, as if your body has gained a new sensory layer that was previously covered by the noise of anxiety and memory. This is not mystical. It is what happens when the nervous system shifts from reaction mode to awareness mode. The body also begins to change biological rhythms. Sleeping deeper or waking up in the middle of the night, yet feeling light and clear. Eating less, but not feeling drained. Feeling more thirsty as the body adjusts its conductivity for energy transmission. These changes reflect the restructuring of the biological layer when the body no longer carries the weight of the old frequency. The cells within you are operating in a new rhythm. Your brain is forming new neural pathways. All of this unfolds in a way you cannot control by will. It simply happens when you no longer force yourself to operate through the old model. Another expression of the biology of energy is the change in how the body responds to memory. Before, whenever a painful memory appeared, your whole body reacted. The heart tightened, the chest constricted, the breath held. The body repeated the exact response of the old version. But when awareness shifts layers, memory no longer triggers a strong reaction. The body hears the old story but does not fall into defense mode. This is healing at the biological layer. You do not forget the past. The body simply stops perceiving it as a threat. This surprises many people. They think they have not processed their wounds because they still remember them. But the goal of healing is not to erase memory. The goal is to release the biological reaction tied to that memory. When the old memory returns and the body remains still, that is the clearest sign that you have surpassed the vibrational layer where it once held power. The body also begins to choose environments that match the new frequency. You naturally want spaces that are light, open, quiet. You feel uncomfortable in heavy spaces even without a reason. You want less of the things that slow your body down. You feel more at ease around people with stable energy. This is not a change of preference. This is biology being guided by the new frequency. The body always chooses the environment that supports the stability of the nervous system. The biological shift also appears through moments when the body suddenly pauses. You're about to react out of habit, but a gentle force inside makes you stop. You're about to say something sharp, but your throat refuses. You are about to step into an old situation, but your body contracts as a warning. This is the natural protection mechanism of the new awareness layer. The body is joining you instead of resisting you. It is being reconnected to the intelligence of the field. The biology of energy is not just the body reacting to new awareness. It is the body becoming a partner to awareness, no longer running ahead of you, no longer working against you. No longer using memory to guide your actions, it begins to operate according to the frequency your new consciousness emits. And when the body stands with awareness, you enter what the sciences call coherence, a state where energy, nerves, emotions, thoughts, and intuition operate in a single flow, not divided, not conflicted, not pulled backward by memory. This is when the body is no longer a place that stores wounds. It becomes a place that stores capability. When the biology of energy synchronizes with the new layer of awareness, you do not just think differently. You live differently. You do not just see the world differently. You touch the world with a new layer of presence. And from here, your quantum journey no longer revolves around healing. It revolves around expansion. The trauma loop does not form from a major event. It forms from the way the body and the mind repeatedly react to the same feeling you never had the chance to break free from. A painful memory only happens once, but your reaction to that memory can repeat for many years. And it is this repetition that traps people, not the original event itself. Escaping the trauma loop is not about forgetting, forgiving, or trying to rise above it. All of these only change the story in your mind, but they do not reach the biological and energetic mechanism underneath. The loop ends only when you no longer emit the frequency that triggers the memory. And the moment the inner frequency changes, the loop dissolves without you needing to defeat it. The first thing to understand is that the trauma loop does not live in the mind. It lives in the nervous system. Each time you recall something painful, the body immediately reacts using the exact old pattern. Heart rate increases, breath holds, chest tightens, shoulders contract, stomach goes cold. The body repeats the same reaction as the first time because it believes you are in danger. The mind is only the storyteller, the body is where the anchor of pain is held. When you change your awareness but the body still holds the old reaction, the loop continues. When you understand the problem but the emotion still erupts the same way, the loop remains intact. When you try to think positively but the body still falls into defense mode, the loop is not broken. This is why many people who are intelligent, conscious, and deeply self-aware still remain trapped in old pain. They are not weak. They simply have not worked at the right location. The trauma loop is a survival mechanism. The body wants to protect you, but because it only knows how to use memory to assess threat, it reacts repeatedly even when no real danger exists. When awareness shifts layers, you begin to see this clearly. You sense that your strong reactions are not caused by the present situation, but by the old energetic layer inside you being activated. It is not others hurting you. It is the unprocessed memories causing your body to interpret everything as danger. The moment you see this clearly, the loop begins to lose its power. Because the loop survives through your belief that the body's reaction is absolute truth. When you pull yourself out of that reaction, when you observe it instead of being pulled into it, the mechanism of the loop begins to fall apart. The body no longer receives the confirmation that it needs to defend you. It is important to understand that the loop is not broken by willpower. Willpower only makes you resist emotion and strengthens the loop. The loop breaks when you stand at a frequency higher than it. The frequency of observation, the frequency of transparency, the frequency no longer driven by old fear. When you stand in a different frequency, the old memory may return, but it no longer makes you shake. Emotions may rise, but they no longer destabilize you. A sentence may touch the same wound, but it no longer causes your whole body to contract. This is the clearest sign that the loop is dissolving. It dissolves not because you have become stronger. It dissolves because you no longer live in the vibration that allows it to exist. One of the most subtle changes is when you begin to recognize that the repeating situations in your life all come from the same root, the same type of people, the same type of interaction, the same emotional tone. And you understand that you are not being punished. You are being guided to the exact point where the loop began, not to suffer more, but to finally see clearly what you used to avoid. Your new awareness makes this process lighter. You no longer feel trapped by fate. You see the structure of the loop and understand that it is opening so you can step out, not so you can fall deeper. What keeps people stuck is trying to fix the loop from the surface, changing environment, changing relationships, changing goals, but the loop does not exist outside. It exists in the frequency you carry. Wherever you go, the loop follows. You change people, but the emotions stay the same. You change jobs, but the reactions remain familiar. You change your life, but the repeating feeling remains identical. It is not the world repeating you. It is you carrying the same frequency through different layers of experience. Escaping the loop is changing the frequency. When the frequency changes, the loop loses its connection point. The memory loses its fuel source. The body stops activating. The mind no longer interprets through the old lens. An experience shifts in a way you cannot force, plan, or fake. At this point, you begin to see the parts of your life that once caused pain through an entirely different lens, not because you forgot them, but because you no longer identify with the person who lived through them. Once you are no longer the old version, the loop cannot touch you. There is no point of connection, there is no code to activate, there is no compatible vibration. Escaping the trauma loop is not defeating the darkness, it is rising to a layer where the darkness can no longer reach you. And when you stand at that layer, you no longer need to hold yourself together. You simply no longer get pulled down. You no longer need to protect yourself from the past. The past no longer has energy to lead you. This is when true freedom begins. Not freedom because you overcame something massive, but freedom because your body, your emotions, and your energy no longer belong to the story that once trapped you. You do not run from the loop. You do not fight it. You do not analyze it. You simply move above it through your frequency. And from there, life no longer revolves around healing. It revolves around expansion and creating the experiences you once could not reach. The new identity does not appear as a decision you consciously set. It does not arise from wanting to become someone better. It is born when your energetic field changes so much that the old version is no longer a viable option. The new identity is not a goal. It is a consequence. When you step out of the frequency that attracts pain, when you break out of the old loops, when the body and awareness have realigned with each other, nothing can keep you in the old shape. You cannot live in an old pattern when your frequency no longer exists there. The formation of the new identity always begins with a feeling that is hard to describe. You feel different, but you cannot define in which direction. You sense that the old decisions become weightless, without pull. The things that once mattered no longer generate strong emotion. You stand in the same life, but everything is seen through new eyes. You no longer react from fear the way you did. No longer are you guided by memory. No longer are you shaped by the expectations of others. This is when the new identity begins to show itself. It appears as a layer of quiet awareness you have never touched before, not the quiet of avoidance. It is the quiet of someone who is no longer pulled into lower energetic layers. You still hear the noise of the world, but the noise no longer pierces into your nervous system. You still see the old chaos, but it no longer shakes you. As if you are standing slightly higher, looking down at the patterns that once confined you. The new identity is not a sudden metamorphosis. It is the gradual replacement of old reactions with new responses. At some point, you realize you no longer get angry the old way, no longer fear the old way, no longer doubt the old way. The things that once controlled you now pass by like a faint echo in a spacious room. This does not make you numb, it makes you precise. This new awareness does not waste energy fighting what no longer belongs to you. What is interesting is that the new identity does not require effort. It does not ask you to hold a certain image. You no longer live to prove anything. You simply live at the frequency you stand in. Because frequency determines behavior. When the frequency rises, behavior changes naturally. When the frequency clarifies, choices shift automatically. When the frequency stabilizes, the true essence rises to the surface. One of the most recognizable signs of the new identity is that you no longer act from lack. You do not chase to fill a void. You do not connect out of fear of being alone. You do not try to achieve something to prove your worth. The new identity does not come from lack. It comes from fullness. An action that comes from fullness is always entirely different from action rooted in lack. Even the way you speak changes. Less defensive, less explanation, less justification, more clarity, more presence, more truth. You no longer use words to protect yourself. You use presence to communicate. This makes others perceive you in a completely different way. They feel your solidity without you showing it. They sense your truth without you needing to say it. The new identity also changes the way you receive experience. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to see events as signals from the field. You read the meaning within every movement. You see the direction energy is taking you, and you adjust yourself gently instead of resisting. You do not follow the flow because you are forced. You follow the flow because you see that the flow aligns with your new structure. The most important thing is that the new identity is not formed from what you add. It is formed from what you remove. All the layers of fear, layer of defense, layer of expectation, layer of performance. When each layer falls away, what remains is you without distortion. The new identity is not a new self. It is the true self. You never had the chance to live because too many layers of noise covered it. There is a moment when you will feel this shift most clearly. It is when you face an old situation and instead of falling into the familiar reaction, you remain still. A stillness full of awareness. A stability from within. That is when you know you are no longer the version that once spun with every gust of emotion. You have stepped into the new identity without needing to declare anything. And, from here, everything in your life begins to change as a natural consequence. Not because you force yourself to change, but because the new identity carries different choices, different behaviors, different frequencies, and life cannot help but mirror that. The new identity does not come to replace you. It comes to return to you the true shape that the field held within your design from the beginning. When you step into it, you do not have to try to become someone. You simply live in the vibrational layer you have reached, and the rest of your life will automatically adjust to that frequency, like a piece of music finally playing in the right rhythm after years of being out of sync. Becoming the person who holds frequency stability is not a state you reach within a few quiet hours or a single deep meditation moment. It is the result of an inner restructuring process where every part of you gradually learns to operate according to the new vibrational layer. When the reset has happened, the question is no longer how to maintain it, but how to live from it. Embodying the reset means letting the new frequency become your default mode of operation, not as effort, but as nature. The first thing that happens when you become a frequency stable person is the shift in your inner rhythm. You are no longer pulled by the pace of the world. You begin to move with your own rhythm, a rhythm that is light yet deep. You speak slower, not because you are tired, but because you are clear. You react slower, not because you lack energy, but because you see more before you act. Inside you exists a space that never existed before. That space is the foundation of stability. When you live in the old frequency, any disturbance throws you off balance. The mind rushes ahead, the emotions scramble, the body follows behind in exhaustion. But when you embody the reset, what holds you is not the effort to stay calm, but a new energetic field you cannot lose. You may be affected, you may tremble slightly, but you no longer fall, no longer collapse quickly, no longer get dragged into the lower layers of energy that once swallowed you. This is stability not born from technique, but from nature. Frequency stability also changes the way you meet emotions. You no longer see emotions as something to fight or control. You see them as waves. They rise, touch you, and pass. You do not cling to positive emotions. You do not run from negative ones. You stand in the position of the observer while the heart does not shatter and the body does not resist. This is when emotion becomes information instead of burden. You begin to notice something you'd never seen before. No emotion is the problem. Only the state you carry when you meet it decides everything. When your frequency is stable, no matter how strong the emotion, it cannot break your structure. Instead, you read it. You understand what it reflects. You see the energetic layer behind every reaction. and you adjust without needing force. Stability also changes the way you interact with the world. You no longer chase anyone, no longer hold on to anyone, no longer fear losing anyone. When you operate from the new frequency, you understand that real connection does not come from effort, but from vibrational harmony. Those who no longer match will drift away without pain. Those who match will remain without force. Your frequency becomes the natural filter. Even in challenging moments, you still feel the inner straight line. It is something you could never see when living in the old layer. Before, difficulty made you break. Now difficulty only makes you step back to adjust. You are no longer tossed like a leaf. You live like someone who knows the wind will shift according to the frequency you hold, not arrogance, inner certainty. Embodying the reset also means you gradually drop the patterns that kept the old ego alive. You no longer need to prove you are right. No longer seek validation. No longer live to protect an image. You realize that the inner truth is stronger than any story you once constructed on the outside. And from that moment, you become light in a completely different way. Light in decisions, light in presence, light when facing situations others find heavy. You also see how quickly the field responds to you. When frequency is stable, reality reorganizes rapidly. Things that do not match fall away almost immediately. Things that match appear gently. You do not need to chase. Your frequency becomes the guiding signal. This is why people who embody the reset often say life becomes orderly without battle. When you live at this layer, your presence changes without needing words. Others feel the need to speak slower around you. They feel safer. They open more, not because you try to create influence. Your stability allows them to put down their defenses. This is influence not born from power, but from frequency. It is important to understand that this stability is not perfect. You will still tremble, still weaken, still fluctuate, but you will never fall back to the old level. Once awareness has opened and frequency has reset, you cannot live as the person you were before. You may stray briefly, but never get lost. You may slow down, but never regress. This is the clearest sign of someone who has embodied the reset. Finally, embodying the reset means you no longer use old pain as a reference point. You do not compare yourself to what once scared you. You do not measure stability by the absence of chaos. You measure it by the steadiness you maintain within chaos. The identity you live now is no longer built from wounds. It is built from the frequency you hold. And that frequency is higher, clearer, and truer than any version you have lived before. This is the stage where you no longer chase healing. You step into the layer where every movement in you comes from fullness, not from lack. Every interaction comes from clarity, not fear. Every choice comes from essence, not pain. And from this moment on, life no longer revolves around overcoming yourself. It revolves around becoming exactly who the new frequency has been calling you to be since the moment you first awakened. The moment you no longer need healing does not come from having resolved all of your wounds. It comes when you realize you were never separate from the field. All the collapses, the distortions, the tremors, the pain throughout the journey were not signs that you were broken, but signs that you were returning to your original vibrational layer. Healing is only necessary when you are still living inside the old story. When that story falls, there is nothing left to fix. There is only returning. Homecoming is not a climactic moment. It is a return so simple that the old mind cannot believe it. You wake up one morning and feel you are no longer carrying the weight of yesterday. You look at your face and see no trace of the old self-blame. You stand in the same room but no longer feel trapped. There is no light, no sign, no explanation. Only a gentle clarity, as if you have returned to a place you left long ago without knowing it. Returning to the field means you no longer search for a place to hide, no longer look for methods to fix, No longer wait for a miracle to save you from the feeling of lack. You stand in your life with a presence that is no longer fragmented. You are not in the future, not pulled into the past, not controlled by the vibrational layers that once pushed you into loops. You are right here in a fullness that needs no reason. And in that moment, healing becomes unnecessary. When you return to the field, you see that every pain you ever carried had a reason to appear, not to weaken you, but to force each layer inside you into the light. You see clearly that the people who hurt you were not enemies, they were doors for you to escape the vibrational layer that had become too small. The situations you once thought were mistakes were actually pathways to the awareness you now stand in. And from this point, you thank instead of resent. You breathe instead of resist. You step forward instead of fear. At this layer, you begin to see the difference between the person you once tried to be and the person you are now. Before, you wanted control to feel safe. Now you are steady because you no longer need control. Before, you sought validation to feel worthy. Now you know your worth needs no proof. Before, you wanted to change to be good enough. Now you change because you are living from a vibrational layer that makes you expand. Homecoming is also when you see life no longer through the lens of fear. You see that the things you once viewed as losses actually open the space the field needed to place you in the right stream. You understand that those who left did not take anything from you. They simply returned you to yourself. You see that the failures that once hurt you were the turning points that made it impossible for you to continue living as the smaller version. Returning to the field means you operate from fullness instead of lack. You no longer search for answers. You hear the answers inside because your frequency is no longer distorted. You no longer feel lost between choices. You feel the right direction without analysis. You no longer try to be kind. You become kind because the stability within you no longer wants to create distorted ripples for anyone. When you live in this state, life is no longer confusing. It becomes simple in a way the old mind cannot accept. You do not chase opportunities. The opportunities aligned with your awareness find you. You do not protect yourself from pain. The situations that could hurt you no longer appear in the vibrational layer you hold. You do not need to prove your nature. The field reflects it so clearly that others feel it without your explanation. The beautiful thing about homecoming is the lightness you carry through each day, no longer worrying about what lies ahead, no longer afraid of what lies behind, no longer heavy with what lies in the present. Light but not loose. Light because you are no longer carrying what does not belong to you. And then there comes a moment when you realize healing was never the destination. Healing was only the path that led you back to your original frequency. The frequency you left when you still had to learn how to survive. Now you are no longer surviving. You are beginning to live. As this chapter ends, I want you to know something simple, yet deepest. You were never broken. You were never wrong. You were never weak. Everything you have gone through was only the process of remembering who you are when you are no longer distorted by fear and memory. And when you return to the field, you return to the part of you that every higher vibrational layer of the universe has always seen. To you, who have walked this journey to the end, may you step into the next stage with clarity and light in your heart. May you live from the frequency that makes you expand every day. May you keep close to the people who make you feel like you are returning to yourself, not becoming someone else. And to your loved ones, those who pass through your life as anchors, as challenges, as light, as lessons, may they feel the new version of you without explanation. May they receive the peace you have reclaimed. And may their journey, like yours, one day return to the place the field has always been waiting to welcome them.